What if the person who believed in you the most was the one you were about to lose forever? He was once betrayed, broke, and left with nothing. But just when success finally arrived, life hit him with a twist he never saw coming. A billionaire's rise from failure, a woman's silent sacrifice, and a moment in the hospital that changed everything. Stay until the end, because this is not just a success story. It is a story that will break your heart and rebuild it. I still remember the smell of wet cardboard inside the tiny warehouse where I slept at night. Rainwater leaked through the broken roof, dripping beside my pillow made of folded jackets. At 22, I carried heavy boxes all day, while watching boys my age drive luxury cars past the gate. Every night, I compared my life to theirs. And every night, I hated myself a little more. My hands were cracked. My stomach stayed half empty. My shoes had holes near the toes. One winter evening, I sat outside a roadside tea stall, counting the few coins left in my pocket. Steam rose from cheap tea. Cold wind cut through my thin shirt. That was when she sat beside me. Maya. She wore a faded blue scarf and carried tiredness in her eyes. Yet her voice felt warm enough to calm a storm. She looked at my trembling hands and asked, "Why do you look at rich people with so much pain?" I laughed bitterly. "Because they already won." She slowly shook her head. "No. You are simply watching their middle chapter, while hating yourself for being at the beginning." Those words stayed inside me like fire. For the first time in years, someone saw value in me. Before success touched my name, Maya worked double shifts at a hospital cafeteria. Her feet swelled every night. Still, she saved money secretly to buy me old business books from street markets. While others mocked my dreams, she protected them gently. When my first company failed, investors humiliated me publicly. One man threw my proposal into the trash and said, "People born poor should stay realistic." That night, I broke down completely. I punched the wall until my knuckles bled. I told Maya I was finished, but she quietly cleaned the blood from my hands with shaking fingers. Then she whispered, "The world punishes people who quit one day before their miracle arrives." So I tried again. For 3 years, I slept inside my office. I survived on instant noodles and cheap coffee. My body weakened. My friends disappeared. Then betrayal came. My business partner stole everything. The accounts, the clients, even the employees I trusted. I stood alone in an empty office, with unpaid bills scattered across the floor. The city lights outside looked cold and cruel. I felt something inside me dying. Then I noticed Maya standing silently near the doorway, holding a small envelope in her trembling hands. Inside it was something that changed my entire life forever. Maya stepped closer, her eyes red from exhaustion, yet strangely calm. The office smelled like dust, cold coffee, and broken dreams. Outside, rain tapped softly against the windows, like the world quietly mourning my failure. I looked at the envelope in her hands. "What is this?" I asked weakly. She swallowed hard. "My future," she whispered. My chest tightened. Inside the envelope was every rupee she had saved for 6 years. Money for her nursing degree. Money for her dream. Money she hid carefully. Working weekends. Missing birthdays. Walking home to save bus fare. I stared at her in disbelief. "No," I said immediately. "I cannot take this." Her voice trembled, but her eyes stayed strong. "You stood back up every time life broke you," she said softly. "Now let me stand beside you." I felt ashamed. Ashamed that I had almost quit. Ashamed that someone who had so little still believed I could become something greater. That night, inside that empty office, We built a plan on torn notebook pages. No investors. No shortcuts. No excuses. Only sleepless nights. Fear. And stubborn hope. For months, we lived like shadows. I worked 18 hours a day. Maya continued her exhausting shifts, bringing me homemade food wrapped in foil. Sometimes cold rice, sometimes dry bread, but somehow, those meals tasted richer than luxury dinners. She would sit beside me in silence, massaging my aching shoulders, while I fought to rebuild everything. Then one morning, something unbelievable happened. An email arrived from an international company. They had seen my idea online. They wanted a meeting. My hand shook so badly, I almost dropped the phone. For the first time in years, hope felt real. But joy lasted only a few hours. That evening, I returned to Maya's apartment and found her sitting on the floor, holding medical reports in trembling hands. Her face looked pale, too pale, and when I saw the tears in her eyes, I knew something was terribly wrong. She looked at me, forcing a fragile smile, and said something that made my entire world stop moving. My throat went dry. The room suddenly felt smaller. The old ceiling fan creaked above us, spinning slowly, as if time itself had grown heavy. Maya lowered her eyes. Her fingers trembled against the medical papers. Then she said quietly, "I have been hiding this for months." My heart sank. A strange fear crawled through my chest. "What happened?" I whispered. She inhaled shakily. "The doctors found something serious." For a moment, I could not breathe. The city noise outside disappeared. No cars. No voices. Only silence. The kind of silence that arrives before your life changes forever. She tried to smile, but tears slipped down her cheeks. "I did not want to distract you," she said softly. "You were finally close to something bigger." I dropped to my knees in front of her. "Why would you carry this alone?" I asked, my voice breaking. She looked at me with tired eyes. "Because I believed in your future, even when mine felt uncertain." Those words shattered me. This woman had sacrificed everything. Her education, her savings, her sleep, her health. And while I chased success, she quietly carried pain without complaint. That night, I did not sleep. I sat beside her bed, listening to the soft hum of the streetlights outside. I watched her sleeping face, the exhaustion hidden beneath bravery. For the first time, money stopped meaning anything to me. I realized success without love was just expensive loneliness. The next morning, I canceled the business meeting. Everyone called me foolish. My remaining partners became angry. One even shouted, "You are throwing away the opportunity of your life." But they did not understand something. Maya had already given me the opportunity of my life. She gave me belief when I had nothing. Now it was my turn to fight for her. Days later, while sitting in a hospital hallway filled with sharp antiseptic smells and pale fluorescent lights, a doctor walked toward us, holding new test results. His expression looked different this time. Too different. He sat down slowly, looked directly at me, and said words I never expected to hear. The doctor folded his hands slowly. His face looked calm, but serious enough to make my stomach twist. The hospital hallway smelled of medicine and quiet fear. People passed us with tired eyes, each carrying invisible battles of their own. I held Maya's hand tightly. Her fingers felt cold. Then the doctor cleared his throat. "We made a mistake in the earlier report," he said carefully. For a second, I thought I heard him wrong. Maya looked up suddenly. "A mistake?" she whispered. He nodded. "The condition is serious, but treatable. I closed my eyes. The air returned to my lungs so fast. It almost hurt. Maya covered her mouth, crying silently, not from fear anymore, from relief. The doctor explained everything slowly. Treatment would take time, money, patience. But there was hope, real hope. As we walked out of the hospital, the evening sky glowed orange. For the first time in months, the world looked softer. Street vendors shouted nearby. The smell of roasted corn drifted through the cold air. Maya suddenly laughed through tears. "You look like you survived a war," she said gently. I smiled weakly. "No," I whispered. "We survived." For the first time, money stopped meaning anything to me. I realized success without love was just expensive loneliness. The next morning, I canceled the business meeting. Everyone called me foolish. My remaining partners became angry. One even shouted, "You are throwing away the opportunity of your life." But they did not understand something. Maya had already given me the opportunity of my life. She gave me belief when I had nothing. Now it was my turn to fight for her. Days later, while sitting in a hospital hallway filled with sharp antiseptic smells and pale fluorescent lights, a doctor walked toward us, holding new test results. His expression looked different this time. Too different. He sat down slowly, looked directly at me, and said words I never expected to hear. The doctor folded his hands slowly. His face looked calm, but serious enough to make my stomach twist. The hospital hallway smelled of medicine and quiet fear. People passed us with tired eyes, each carrying invisible battles of their own. I held Maya's hand tightly. Her fingers felt cold. Then the doctor cleared his throat. "We made a mistake in the earlier report," he said carefully. For a second, I thought I heard him wrong. Maya looked up suddenly. "A mistake?" she whispered. He nodded. "The condition is serious, but treatable." I closed my eyes. The air returned to my lungs so fast. It almost hurt. Maya covered her mouth, crying silently, not from fear anymore, from relief. The doctor explained everything slowly. Treatment would take time, money, patience. But there was hope, real hope. As we walked out of the hospital, the evening sky glowed orange. For the first time in months, the world looked softer. Street vendors shouted nearby. The smell of roasted corn drifted through the cold air. Maya suddenly laughed through tears. "You look like you survived a war," she said gently. I smiled weakly. "No," I whispered. "We survived." That night, while she slept peacefully beside me, I opened my laptop. I stared at the international company email again. The opportunity still existed, but fear returned quickly. What if I failed again? What if chasing success destroyed the little piece we had left? Then I noticed something on the desk. A small folded note Maya had left earlier. Her handwriting looked shaky but warm. It said, "Never compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. You were born for something meaningful. Do not stop now." I sat there for hours, reading those words again and again. The next morning, I accepted the meeting. For weeks, I prepared like my life depended on it. No sleep, no excuses, no distractions. Then the biggest day of my life arrived. I entered a glass building taller than anything I had ever imagined. Rich voices echoed through polished halls. Men in expensive suits barely looked at me. One executive glanced at my worn shoes and smirked. In that moment, old insecurity returned like poison. I felt poor again, small again, broken again. Then the conference room door opened, and the first person I saw sitting inside made my blood run cold. It was someone from my painful past. Someone who once destroyed everything I'd built. My feet froze near the doorway. The polished conference room suddenly felt colder. Glass walls surrounded us, reflecting a version of me I barely recognized. The man sitting at the far end of the table lifted his eyes slowly. Daniel, my former business partner. The same man who emptied our accounts, stole my clients, and disappeared while I drowned in debt. He looked sharper now. Expensive watch, perfect suit, confident smile. The kind of smile that hides old damage behind polished success. For a second, anger burned through me. I remembered sleeping hungry, selling my belongings, watching Maya quietly skip meals, so I could keep chasing a dream everyone called impossible. Daniel smirked slightly. "Well," he said casually, "I never thought I would see you here." His words carried poison disguised as politeness. My hands tightened. Every painful memory returned at once. Failure, humiliation, betrayal. The executives watched silently, waiting for something to happen. Then Daniel leaned back in his chair. "You still chasing impossible dreams?" he asked. A few people laughed softly, and for one painful second, the old version of me almost returned. The insecure boy who believed rich people belonged in another world. Then my phone vibrated inside my pocket. A message from Maya. Just 3 words. "Trust your journey." I stared at the screen. Something inside me became quiet. Not weak. Quiet in the way storms become silent before changing direction. I looked up at Daniel. Then I smiled calmly. "Yes," I said softly. "And this time, I learned something valuable." He raised an eyebrow. "What?" I placed my presentation folder on the table. "The people who betray you sometimes become the reason you grow stronger." The room went silent. No anger. No shouting. Only truth. For the next 40 minutes, I presented my idea with everything I had. Every sleepless night. Every sacrifice. Every painful lesson. Every painful lesson. I spoke like a man with nothing left to prove, except belief in himself. When the meeting ended, the executives exchanged quiet looks. No smiles. No clues. The chairman stood up slowly. He walked toward the window, hands behind his back. Then he turned toward me and said something that completely changed the direction of my life. The chairman turned from the window slowly. His expression was unreadable. The entire room held its breath. Even Daniel stopped smiling. Then the chairman spoke. "I have seen hundreds of founders," he said calmly, "but very few survive betrayal and still stand with clarity." He looked directly at me. "Most people change when they suffer. You did not." My heart pounded violently. I could feel sweat on my palms. The silence in the room felt heavier than words. Then he said it. "We are not investing in your idea." My stomach dropped. Daniel exhaled, almost laughing. But the chairman raised a hand. "We are partnering with you." The room shifted instantly. "What you built is not just a company," he continued. "It is resilience in motion." I froze. Years of pain, sleepless nights, humiliation, all of it suddenly felt real and validated. Daniel's face tightened. For the first time, his confidence cracked. The chairman slid a document across the table. "But there is one condition," he said. My voice barely came out. "What condition?" He looked at me carefully. "You lead the project globally, starting immediately." My breath stopped. Immediately meant responsibility beyond anything I had ever imagined. Billions, markets, people's trust, and failure was no longer personal. It was global. I looked down at the contract. My hand shook slightly. Then I remembered Maya. Her words. Her sacrifice. Her silent strength beside my broken years. I signed. The pen felt heavier than iron. A quiet moment passed. Then applause slowly filled the room. Not loud. Respectful. Real. Daniel stood up abruptly. He forced a smile, but it did not reach his eyes. As I walked out of the conference room, I felt the world I once feared now bowing slightly in front of me. But outside the building, reality hit again. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. A nurse's voice came through, urgent and shaken. "It is about Maya," she said. My steps stopped immediately. The city noise faded again. My hand tightened around the phone. "What happened?" I whispered. There was a pause on the other end. And then she said words that froze my entire future in place. The nurse's voice trembled through the phone. "She collapsed during treatment," she said softly. My world stopped. The contract in my hand slipped slightly, almost falling to the floor. For a moment, I could not hear anything except my heartbeat. No applause. No city noise. No success. Only silence that crushed my chest. I ran. I do not remember leaving the building. I do not remember the elevator. I only remember air burning in my lungs. As I pushed through traffic, through red lights, through time itself. When I reached the hospital, the corridor felt longer than ever before. White walls, sharp smell of medicine, faint footsteps of doctors rushing past. Then I saw her, Maya, lying still on the hospital bed. Her face looked peaceful, but too pale, too quiet. I grabbed her hand immediately. It was warm, but weak. "Maya," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Please open your eyes." Her fingers moved slightly. A fragile smile formed on her lips. "You came," she said softly. I nodded quickly, tears falling without control. "I am here. I am here." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she spoke slowly. "Did you get it?" I closed my eyes tightly. Even now, even like this, she was thinking about my future. "Yes," I said. "We got everything." Her eyes filled with relief. But then her expression changed. Not fear, not sadness. Something deeper. Acceptance. She squeezed my hand gently. "I always believed," she whispered, "even when you did not." My chest broke completely. "No," I said, shaking my head. "Do not leave now. Not after everything." Her voice softened. "You were never alone," she said. "You just needed to see it." Machines beeped quietly beside us. Time felt like it slowed down. Doctors stood silently near the door. I held her hand tighter than ever before. "I cannot do this without you," I said helplessly. She smiled faintly. "You already are." A long silence followed. Her breathing became softer, slower. And just as I leaned closer to hear her next words, the monitor beside her began to change its rhythm. The monitor's rhythm steadied. Slowly, then stronger. A doctor rushed forward, checking her pulse, exchanging relieved glances with the nurses. "She is stable," he said quietly. My knees nearly gave way. I did not feel strong. I felt empty and grateful at the same time. Maya turned her head slightly toward me. Her eyes were tired, but alive. "You are still here," she whispered. I nodded, unable to speak. She smiled faintly. "Then your journey is not finished." Tears blurred my vision. Outside the window, morning light began to rise over the city. Soft, warm, like a second chance. Days later, she slowly recovered. Every small improvement felt like a miracle I was allowed to witness. I stayed beside her whenever I could, even while managing the company that was now growing faster than I ever imagined. But success no longer felt like the destination. It felt like responsibility. One evening, I sat beside her hospital bed again. "I almost lost everything," I said quietly. Maya looked at me gently. "You never lost anything," she replied. "You only stopped seeing what truly mattered." I understood then. All those years I compared myself to others. I was blind to my own path. Blind to the strength built in struggle. Blind to the love that carried me when I could not walk. Blind to the value of patience, pain, and persistence. Months later, she walked out of the hospital holding my hand. Not as a broken person, but as a reminder that survival itself is a form of victory. Years passed. The company became global. My name appeared in places I never dreamed of. But every success story I told always began with one truth. Not money, not luck, not intelligence, but a woman who believed in me when I had nothing left to believe in myself. And a lesson I learned too late, but never forgot again. Comparison destroys gratitude. Struggle builds strength. And the right person can turn your lowest moment into your greatest beginning. I still remember her words before everything changed. "Your journey is unique." Now I live by them. Because in the end, success is not about being better than others. It is about becoming who you were meant to be, without losing your heart along the way.